Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Joel Sked, and to help me run through the 6 games from the Scottish Premiership at the weekend is a man who in one night was carried out a nightclub by bouncers because he dislocated his knee, only to get back in and be thrown out for lewd behaviour 1.5 hours later. Of course, it can only be Tony Anderson.
Hi, Joe. That was an embarrassing moment that I thought I'd done on WhatsApp just as with friends.
Oh no! As soon as I realised I am presenting, I thought, you know what? How am I going to introduce Tony? Oh yes, I know. He put an embarrassing story in the WhatsApp chat. So
yeah, I must have been about 18. It was an establishment nightclub. For those of my vintage who might remember that.
Where was that about?
So it's near Scottish Widows, near Cav in Edinburgh.
Okay.
Just off like Lothian Road, if you go around the back, near like the Chippy and stuff. Scottish Widows, for people who know that area. So it's just up into Haymarket, just off Lothian Road. So it was, and that was, it used to do 50 pence a drink back in the day. You could get like quadruple vodkas for £2. That's what it was. And then on a Sunday, it was £1 a drink for everything. So yeah, it was a place that was busy, as you can imagine. It was all hip hop and R&B music, and Graham Easton used to DJ in there. True story.
Oh wow! Was it Graham? Was it Graham Easton that you just DJing that he dislocated your knee to?
I think so. As I said, I can't remember for sure, but it was. The song was to Gwen Stefani and Eve. Rich Girl, for those who can remember that one. And yes, they're just the shame of having girls standing round you waving over men to come and save you as you've tried to do some sort of dance move and it go horribly wrong. So yeah, a magical moment in my life.
I've just got an image of one of the girls doing the Gary Lineker or Sir Bobby Robson, your Paul Gascoigne. Oh, that's yeah. I think I've only been chucked out somewhere once, and that was the Hive, because I rubbed a bald bouncer's head like I was Aladdin, and it was it was a lamp, and he put me in like an arm lock and marched me out. That was embarrassing. Had to plead my innocence to get back in. Well, not my innocence, plead to get back in so I could get my jacket.
What you like? I was only going to wish. I was going to use my one wish to wish for you to grow your hair back. Yeah.
He was not in the mood for listening to me. So
funnily enough, they're not bouncers. Famously,
I could just remember standing in the dark. So I think it was quite cold, and not doing the pinch fingers Italian gesture. Doing the praying one to try and to get my jacket. That's all I wanted. But yeah, how are things, Tony? How are things before we get into it?
I'm pretty well. I enjoyed the game on Saturday. I was going to go to the cinema after the game, but instead I waited. Mandy finished, and she came down. She had the car, and we couldn't be arsed, and I had a few pints. So I was like, I'd prefer. So we went to Desi's instead at the bottom of Leith Walk, and had an Indian instead. Then just went home. So it was rather civilized for myself, and then stayed at home on Sunday. And I've got a driving lesson again tomorrow for anyone who's been following that I've been trying to do that. So we'll see how that goes. Up at Turnhouse tomorrow.
How far off are you?
Oh, I'm far off.
Okay.
This will be my 7th and still I'm far off.
Oh, okay.
I could do a lot of the basics. I've went out in my own car a few times. But it's just so busy. He's like, oh, you should read that. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that, man. Let's be brutally honest. I'll say to him, yeah, I'll buy that book and I'll read how to do that and watch the YouTube videos, but I'm not. I think he watches the show, so hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast. So
yeah, he'll be thinking about it like, don't do it. I will get more money out of you.
Exactly. Yeah. The only person who's been affected by that decision is me. But there you go. How are you, Joel? More to the point.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. My weekend was far from entertaining. I spent most of it on the road to and from Dingwall on Saturday, and then having to do follow-up stuff yesterday. So just a work.
Dingwall's, I imagine, is very different when you have to go up in a work capacity, and no beers on the train or things of that ilk.
Yes, yeah. So I've driven it both times this season. One of which was having to come back down after the 2-2 draw, which was really fun in the piss and rain. And if I was a passenger, yes, on Saturday, I'd probably be asked to stop it somewhere and get a couple of cans, but that wasn't the case. So yeah, it was just a dull weekend that involved Hearts.
But you won.
We won.
That does simply make a change.
It does. It does. I was bordering on happy on Saturday coming down the road. So yeah, we'll see how long that stays.
What a treat for Jenny
later on. Yeah, she did barely see me all weekend. Right, we'll get into it. Of the 6 games, 5 were meaningful. So let's start with the Old Firm game, because try telling those fans it doesn't mean anything. No, seriously, we'll do that last. That was a shit game. We'll get straight into Hibernian 3, Dundee United 1. Hibs went in front through Martin Boyle, assisted by Declan Gallagher, who turned into Jimmy Traore at Burnley. Hibs doubled their lead through Kucherevich, again, helped by some curious Dundee United defending. Trapanovsky got one back for United, but it was the 3 points were sealed for Hibs late on through Dwight Gale. Right, on you go, Tony. Wax lyrical.
I'd say the first half, again, similar to the previous game against one of the Dundee teams at Easter Road. It's like the Aberdeen game, if you take that out in isolation, it's like Hibs' best performances have actually probably come in those last 2 games at Easter Road, where they've properly taken off. Hibs went back to playing Kucherevich up front in this game rather than Bowie. That's been working really well over recent weeks, but obviously, with Bowie's performance when he came off the bench against Dundee, I could see why Gray possibly changed it there. It's hard to hold back when you know you've got a player probably that looks as good as Bowie does when we get to see him at last. But he didn't play particularly well in the game there. And he also brought in Junior Hoylett, who has obviously been going through an amazing patch of form, and he was dropped for Josh Campbell. But last week I went into the reasons for that, so I don't want to go too much into it. But Hoylett was able to make a huge difference right away. And Hibs started like a train. They were well on top. They were suffocating Dundee United. And then he picks that brilliant pass for Chris Caddy going at the box. But the beauty of Declan Gallagher and that mistake is we basically didn't get to see if Hibs were affected by last week. Like that was that mistake totally removed any period of doubt or anyone saying, because bizarrely, we're in May and we were essentially going into uncharted territory about how Hibs react to defeat, because they've basically only done a season of never winning and winning. So we've never actually seen how it works when like just go through a normal patch of form. And with Declan Gallagher doing that there, it was absolutely stupendous. And Dundee United were really poor. When you take Savelji out that midfield, they brought Docherty. They had Docherty back in there, who's looked really good for them when he's fit. They were able to take out Alan Campbell, but I really think they miss him when they have to play him in this back three. Gallagher and Idah, they just got gobbled up by Kucherevich and Boyle, and you could see with their attitude in Boyle and Kucherevich that they were gunning them down, and they're slow. And they see Kucherevich for the goal. Kucherevich, I think he thinks for a second about pushing a bit wider to buy himself some time for people to come forward. And I just think he just notices that the people chasing after him just aren't getting anywhere near him. So he just literally just runs in a straight line, putting it in, and so it opens his legs up a bit. And it's a good finish. It's kind of finish that if he hits it cleaner, I don't think he scores. But the fact that it's slightly like trundles a bit, it goes so accurately over to there and into the net. But Dundee United, I'll let you maybe speak a tiny bit about that. I don't know what you thought when you saw those goals.
The goals were nonsensical. Like the first goal, I thought it was like really nice build up. You talked about Junior Hoylett, and that was something we actually talked about on WhatsApp ahead of the me and Craig Anderson doing the top 12 like attacking midfielders, and you saw everything that Hoylett brings to the team in that moment where nothing's rushed, everything's measured, everything's thought through, and he's I've been sorry for talking about Hearts, but I usually just tendency to bring back stuff to Hearts and things I've witnessed this season. A big issue for Hearts in the final third has been decision making. Whereas you look at Hoylett and he just makes the right decisions. But aside from the goals, it was interesting that you mentioned you weren't sure what Hibs were going to be like because Dundee United handed them a gift with that goal in the 3rd minute. But just watching Hibs' approach in that opening period, it clearly gave them confidence, but it was like their tails looked up. It looked like Hughes pushed right up the park and suffocated Dundee United and didn't let them build out and were able to get turnovers and attack constantly and put them under pressure.
And like Dundee, and the minute you do that with Dundee United, they want to sit deep. The minute it went 2-0, I felt so comfortable because I was like, out of all the teams, like Dundee United don't have it in them to go and score 3 goals. It's not the type of team they are. That's not a criticism. Goodwin's worked, I would say, worked miracles with the squad he's got to get them where they are and with a chance to Europe because they're a 1-0 team. That's what they are. I know people will be able to show. I mean, they beat Hibs 3-2 or whatever in a game previously, but on the whole, that's a 1-0 team that they do it and like to go into Hibs defence, Bashiri and Iredale again, brilliant. Bashiri absolutely pocketed Dalby and in true Mean Girls fashion, stop trying to make Van der Sande a thing. It is like, it's stop it. When he came and you see the difference that it made when Dundee United made the changes at half time. So they brought on Glenn Middleton and they brought on Trapanovsky at half time, which gave them some sort of link for their midfield. I thought they were worried about Hibs would be, and I think they wanted to make sure that they were able to go long to Dalby, and they wanted another centre forward right up there beside them to try and be able to take the knockdowns. I think that's the idea of why they've went with them. But they were so much better when they actually had link and they were able to sort of dribble. Middleton got a little bit of joy down his side, not much, because I'm going to come on to the most Hibs first half were brilliant. It was one of the best Hibs have actually played in this. But my most impressive thing for me was how much Hibs managed to take back control of the game after Dundee United scored. So Dundee United in that first 10 minutes of that second half, they went at Hibs. Their whole season was in that period. You know, like if they wanted to finish third, it was there. So everyone knew, right, there's no way that Dundee United aren't going to come out and really go for the jugular. And I was like, I'm not overly worried. But then Jordan Smith makes a huge save right before it from Idah. Jordan Smith, I have to say, even I am surprised now that how good he started to actually play. I was of the opinion he was being protected rather than he was playing well. And I do still believe that there was a period, but it's like that protection has now let him grow in enough confidence. And now when he plays, he doesn't make any mistakes, and he now does make big saves. So from like Parkhead, maybe even a little bit before that in the Cup onwards, he started to make really, really big, important sort of match-winning saves that before I was always like, any good shot's going to beat him. That was my mindset. And now, like, he's simply contributing. He's not making any mistakes, and he's making really, really big saves. And with him doing that, and Bashiri, I mean, going up against Dalby's obviously one of the toughest strikers to play in the league. He barely got a sniff for the whole 90 minutes on him. But yeah, they had the 10 minutes at the start of the second half, Dundee United. They went it was a big mistake for Kukurevic. I felt bad for him because Kukurevic, the last 2 games at Easter Road have been by far his best performances since coming back into the fold. But the fresh air, it's honking. And it's a really nice finish from Trapanovsky into the far bottom corner. But then after that, Hibs just totally take control of the game. Dylan Levitt was the best player on the pitch. Again, I'd probably say in the last 6 weeks, Dylan Levitt's been Hibs' best player. He allows Hibs to be so probing. I'm having Triantis in there, who Triantis was awful in this game. He was absolutely... And Triantis does this sometimes. He does have... Because he's a high-risk player. Like when people ask me, I don't think they have a similar style, but their mentality and the way they play, I think he's quite like Rio Hatate. Is a way of like, it's all high risk. He's always trying to he makes difficult decisions. He tries to take the difficult option sometimes, especially in his dribbling. He kept on going into like 2 or 3 players when the space was there to be taken advantage of. And he does that quite regularly, but then a lot of the time he does it and then he breaks free and he totally flummoxes 3 players and then he's driving through, and we've scored quite a few goals of him being able to side rule that. But Levitt, it's not side to side with Levitt at all. He's able to play, especially with Hoylett in there, and like you say, his ability to drop off. The fact that Martin Boyle's got a free role in there, these players, so Levitt always tries to make a probing fast, always tries to play into someone's feet, and then he's happy. He's got the quality to switch it all the time. He takes the ball on the half turn, and he's really added something new. All our best performances, attacking wise, are with Levitt the team because we're able to move forward quicker. And he'll play a more probing pass than what Mariah Welsh or Joe Newell would play, for example.
That's I think that's the way that Hibs set up and the way that you play, having someone who is able to go longer rather than just keep it. You look at Levitt and you think, right, he's just going to keep it simple and play a lot of sharp passes. Whereas if you've got the fact that he's able to do more than that and be able to switch play, it allows you to get Cadden on the ball quick, Chris Cadden on the ball quicker, and when he plays, Nicky Cadden on the ball quicker, rather than it take him 3 or 4 passes to get
Absolutely.
there. It takes one, and then you've got space, and it makes it harder for teams to shuffle across. And I suppose probably the biggest thing that impressed me with Hibs, unfortunately, is it's the options that you can bring. Boyle off, you've got Gale that comes on. You bring Kucherevich off, you've got Bowie that comes on. You take Junior Hoylett that comes off, Josh Campbell comes on. You take a beat off, who's a solid left back, and then you're bringing Nicky Cadden on. So you've just got all these. It's not just 11, 12 players. You're now looking at a squad that is of 16, 17 guys that David Gray can probably turn to and trust. That's been a long time since that's happened.
Absolutely, yeah, and this is something I said at the game, and it all played out. Is like suddenly, and I think Goodwin mentioned it, it's weapons. So like when the game does start to get stretched or it gets tired, or like I said, Dundee United get their tails up a little bit, Hibs are turning to the bench and they're arguably bringing on better players than the ones that are on the pitch. And Bowie was superb when he came on again. He just started the one that he set up for Campbell that got cleared off the line. I think it was Strain who done really well to clear that. He like that. Bowie just batters. I think it's Sivelji just completely out the way. And Bowie's so clever. It's not just brute strength that he does. He bides his time on when he makes the contact with a player, when he backs in, or when he wants to do that shoulder barge when you're not quite favourite to get the ball and you want to get on the inside. You can see he waits till the player shifts their weight onto one bit of the foot and then he goes to make contact. So it's like, rather than just being brute strength, there's a skill in the timing of when he do it. And that's why so often in those types of duels, he's the one who comes out on top because he's got a blend of agility and strength and timing. And like you say, like once that came on, suddenly you're dealing with something completely different. And now with Nicky Cadden, and something I think Gray's done, and I think it's deliberate. Jordan Obita's been really good since he came in for Nicky Cadden. And I always thought that it doesn't matter. Nicky Cadden's going to come in just because he's got so many weapons and he's been one of Hibs' best players this season. But I think there's something clever in it with him and Kucherevich, even what he done with Mariah Welsh for a while when he was playing, when he played well. It's like, even if the best player isn't going to come in, then that means that every single player in that squad knows that if they come in and play well, if Nicky Cadden can't come straight back into the team, that means no one can come straight back into the team. But that's also circumstance allows Gray to do that as well. It's not as easy when you're maybe mid-table or down the bottom of the league to be able to behave that way. And you just saw again, Nicky Cadden's come off the bench the 2 last home games and just set up, I think, 3 goals, all with just pinpoint crosses. And it was again with that. It was a nice move to get him behind. Campbell tried to do the cutback. It comes back to him, and it's absolutely the precision on it that Gale. It's a really nice header, but he doesn't even need to jump. He just stands and he nods in there, and it's perfect. And Gale comes on, and obviously he brings cuteness, experience, goes down, wastes a bit of time, all that type of stuff when we're in this moment. And in games, even though I would say I think Ferry should take a bit of stick for that goal. He's in the middle, so Gale manages to get the space for that, and you see Ferry moves away from the ball, to go further forward rather than sticking in where the danger is. And he ends up just moving out the way for that ball to land directly onto Gale's head. But Goodwin said it. That Dundee United team does look like it has just completely ran out of steam.
So I suppose that's the way. I keep saying I suppose, but the finishing up this game at that point is the fact that it was almost like a knockout game in the way that with Hibs winning, that knocks Dundee United out of the race for third place, and now it's just between Hibs and Aberdeen. Aberdeen, who we'll come to, lost to St Mirren. How are you feeling about finishing third, Tony? And have you started to look at the Europa League / Conference League Wikipedia pages, which are always very, very helpful when deciding or get excited about it?
I've been doing that for weeks, I'll be honest. Because people post on Twitter who the teams that are currently would be making. Yeah, so I like a bit of that, going through it, especially on the conference. And I've been, to give you an idea, debating today whether I would prefer to be in the Europa League or the conference in a Hibs chat based on the types of trips that you can get. People some people want to go to the heritage clubs and maybe take the hiding, and then I was more like you can get a lot of the good trips while still getting teams you can possibly beat. That's my vibe. And
if you do it competently enough, there is a very good chance you qualify for the knockout stages, which is
and then
class.
You get a knockout game after Christmas, which sounds just like that's just never happened. So it's more like that's a fun thing that can happen. But obviously Europa League, the heritage and money that can come from that is obviously, I can see why people would be siding for it. But yeah, I'm pretty confident, especially after that. It was getting beat off Aberdeen in a way that the game, as I said last week, the game was being played the way Hibs wanted it to be against Aberdeen, because as I'll come on to, there's just simply a way to play Aberdeen that everyone is worked out and knows. And obviously with the wonder goal that caught Hibs out, which is always the what can happen if you play a game where you let the other team have the ball and that type of stuff. That can happen, especially Aberdeen do have quality players. But we went into the next game playing against the next best team in the league outside the Old Firm, and they were completely swept aside. And the team was really good. Big crowd, everyone was exciting. In the summer months, I'd be lying if I was trying to pretend that I didn't think Hibs were going to finish third. I'd be lying. And I'd be lying if I thought that I didn't think the Hibs are the third best team in the league. I think they are. And I think that's pretty much been proven now across a large portion of the season. And as I'll come on to, I've got a bit of criticism for Aberdeen, but the funny thing will be is the criticism, because I watched that game and I've seen Aberdeen a lot recently, but that can still all fall completely flat on my face. But Aberdeen will have to go and beat, pretty much we'll have to go and beat both sides of the Old Firm to catch Hibs. I'm not sure I see it.
It's I mean, it's from a personal and selfish point of view, it is a shit position to be in, watching two teams that don't like to see do well duking out to do well. We'll move on to the bottom six, where we're not going to go to Dingwall just yet. We will go to Dens Park. Dundee 1, Motherwell 2. Dundee went ahead through Antonio Portales, a lovely strike, gave them a 1-0 lead at half-time. It could have been 2-0, but it was controversially ruled out. We'll get to that. Motherwell hit back in the second half, and they did so through Tom Sparrow, and then sub Maswanisi scored a stoppage time winner at the point when Motherwell were down to 10 men, because it's Dundee. Of course they are. I think we should probably start with the controversial decision. Get out of the road, and then we can laugh at Dundee and their constant misfortune. I can see why it was given as an offside.
Yeah, I can see why, but I don't agree with that at all. And what annoys me about VAR, and you see this quite, I don't want to get into it, but what you see quite a lot with these decisions is they seem to, even though they get the time to see it properly, they're still able to remove the context, even though they've got all that time to consider the context. They somehow manage to remove it. And he pulls out going for the ball. So he doesn't. It's not even like, because the way I would have agreed with this more is if he had went for it, even if the other player hadn't noticed. So even if he didn't affect what the other player done, if he still went for it, but he actually pulls out of going for it, and the player doesn't see him, and he doesn't affect it. So like when you see go like that, I just think it's just a bad decision, and it's always more galling when it's a goal of such like a high standard that's taken away.
And it's the fact that what I think you can always tell by a good goal when a teammate puts his head to his hands, his hands to his head as soon as he sees it, which Joe Shaughnessy did with the second goal. And so it was Thompson who was forced to play the ball, but I don't think it was Robertson who forced him to do that, even though he initially went to do it, then he pulled out. I think it was Shaughnessy who had knocked the ball. He then went for a second time to go towards the ball, so Thompson still had to do it. So yeah, I can see why they've given it, but it's one of those where, and this is big criticism of VAR, where you're finding ways to you're kind of almost looking for things where it's just not. It's only goes as cut and dry, and like you said, I think context should have been applied to it.
But it just, I was really annoyed because when I saw the two goals, and he's quite a fun player, Portales, and he's been moved into a new position recently into midfield, and I was like, oh, we're going to get something cool. But you watched this, didn't you? My assumption is that this little goal had a big effect on Dundee mentally, and I think their mentality is one of the main things that you would have to slate this season, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first half they were the better side. Motherwell were just quite slow. They wanted the ball. They were decent in possession, but going from midfield to attack, they were just really slow. And Dundee, I think, are quite a good countering side, or they're a good playing in transition, because they've got the likes of Scott Tiffany and Simon Murray up front, and Mulligan as well, who's over the last few weeks playing centrally, has really impressed me just with his. He's just a big boy who can run. He can run.
Ball carrying's good as well.
His ball carrying's fantastic, and he's a good dribbler. Plays his head up, but also just his size as well. So that was really impressive. Motherwell bringing I always get his name wrong. Maswanisi on at halftime made a massive difference, because he was able to provide a bit of pace in the final third. But yeah. I think it would be foolish to suggest that the goal or lack of the second goal didn't impact the game massively, because it just changes the dynamic completely going in at halftime. It changes the mentality completely going at halftime. But at the same time, you have to praise Motherwell for doing that. But secondly, criticise Dundee, because they just find new ways to piss the bed. And it's like finding new and imaginative ways. They're not pissing the bed. It's like they'll wake up and type of that's pissing all over the kids' Christmas presents, or on the dog, or in the spare room where the in-laws are staying. It's just they just find new and imaginative ways to lose games, and it's really funny.
You mentioned three things there that I know friends have done.
Oh,
I've also seen my father-in-law on Christmas Eve, come back from the pub and get up and literally fall in stages into the Christmas tree and flatten all the presents, and then just lie there pretty much unconscious, which is a fun moment for me.
I have. Was it in your house, or was it?
No, it was at his own house. I just had to go to bed. I just did too much for me. I'm laughing too much. That's it. The night is peaked for me. I'm off.
I have. It's a weird condition that where you drink so much and then you manage to pee anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah. I've got a few friends who partake in that quite You can maybe ask one of your fellow podcast members what one of these people done, but we'll come into that another time.
And is one of these friends a fellow podcast member?
Well, we'll talk about this at a later date.
Okay. We'll leave that in the ether for people listening to decide.
Yeah. We've got I do think they need to be Tony Docherty needs to take a bit of a slating. Because one of my questions for you, Tony, was: do you think he should be under pressure? I think because it's one of those, it works two ways, because he's built a team that I quite rate, and he's got players in it that I quite like, so he's part of that. So part of the underperformance is because of something that he achieved last season and because of the team that he's built. But it feels like we've made a lot of excuses for them over the course of the season through injuries. And I think that was fine. But you've got this, Shognessy's back, Lara Kesh is still there. You've got Mulligan and Cameron there. Cameron, who I think, by all accounts, had another really bad game in this one, and his inconsistency has been quite stark. For a guy who's signing for Rangers, you expect him to be able to bring more consistency to his game. But also the fact that they're carrying a striker who's doing that. Like, you can't be with that Dundee team and having Simon Murray as one of the top scorers in the entire league, and it's such a talismanic figure, and still be in trouble for going down. I just don't think that's on. If you're going to have, they're not like it's like the levels of, like, you try and remember like Griffiths doing it for Hibs, but even then they're like mid-table when you're being dragged by a player who does all that. But I think you start looking at like guys like Adewumi, Tiffany. Are they really that good? Or is Simon Murray carrying a lot of it for them? I don't know. And for this one, Silla's not playing. And when he brought on today, he brought on Scott Fraser to shore up the midfield instead of Silla. And Fraser looked, I asked Gary, and he said that Fraser looked really, really like terrible. And Cameron had another stinker. Well, I don't know why he never come off, because he was maybe kind of locked. And then you've got Clark Robertson dropping like a 0 out of 10 performance. And it always feels like they just, as you said, they just set fire to themselves. And that comes down to management eventually, surely, when it happens so often.
I remember last season, it was, we did it, I think Carts did it twice in a week, or twice in like 10 days, where Dundee, we ended up winning from losing positions against Dundee, and I was at a game, I was covering the game up at Dens, and there was a fan in the main stand at Dens was going off his head at Tony Docherty, and he was going just about how often Dundee got themselves in front and failed to win. And you look across this season and last season, that's 18 times they have been ahead and not won a game. I think if my research is correct, so it was 9 times last season and 9 times this season. Gary messaged us and he said in 18 home games we have conceded 1 equaliser and 5 winners in the 90th minute or later. And that just, I know it's a young squad, and he's worked with a young squad, but that can't be like that. That can't be the sole reason, especially when you've got Carson in there, you've got Joe Shaughnessy in there, you've in the past you've had Jordan McGee, and you've got Clark Robertson. Again, he is an experienced player, so something's not right there within the group, and it's a weird one, because I'm not sure if they've had this quality, for want of a better word, of being managing to lose points from winning positions in their time in the Scottish Premiership. But every time they've been in the Scottish Premiership, they have always seemed to have, certainly in my most recent memories, they've always had a defence, or they're just a team that gives up goals really easily, and they've just got this soft centre, and the goals they conceded on Saturday were so soft. And I also should emphasise, they lost to a Motherwell side who were playing with 10 men at the time. Yeah. It was 1-1 at the time.
And it's not a good Motherwell side. That's just something else I wanted to say. It's like a poor Motherwell team. And the fact that when they did the 10 men, that seemed to have a more positive effect on Motherwell than it did on Dundee. That there has to be something wrong there. And for them to be able to win away from home against this Dundee team with 10 men, when they've just got they've got
nothing to play for either.
Nothing to play for fullbacks aren't particularly good. Payton is your winger, not great, is it? Really, Tony Watt's maybe playing a bit for a contract or whatever just now, and obviously Halliday's sort of good because he's available. Is kind of the phrases that I kind of hear a bit about, and I'm a big fan of Slattery, and Oxborough coming back looked like that had a really big impact on the team because Balcom's not been great, and no. I think he's that one who maybe spreads a little bit of anxiety. But it wasn't just like they snatched the win; they could have scored. They could have ended up winning 4-1 after it went down. But you were talking about Mashinishi. I love the goal. I mean, it's embarrassing for Robertson's point of view. But
Robertson looks like there was just suddenly in his in that period an eclipse happened, and he just stared at it and just got lost. It was wild.
But he gets up really well. If I'm coming at it from his point of view, he hangs up really well, and it's like a bullet header. And Mashinishi's been quite a fun player, I suppose, this season, if not very consistent again, much like majority of the league. But yeah, I don't know. And the thing is, next season, you feel like they're going to have a weaker team with Dundee. And like, because Cameron and Mulligan, I know I was saying that about Cameron, but Cameron's still like a quality player, if you know what I mean. But you imagine Mulligan's going to be away, Cameron's going to be away, Simon Murray will be another year older, Carson's going to be fucking ancient, another year under his belt, and you start. I mean, it's going to be a lot to rebuild again, and you're maybe not doing it from a particularly position of strength. And like you're saying, I wouldn't sack Tony Docherty right now.
No.
But when he's had this season and then he tries to rebuild again next season, if it starts badly, then him personally, he's fucked. And then the knives come out. And like I said, he's been involved in football, but in terms of having a management gig at this level, it's not a lot. So if I start thinking about this from just his point of view, I think this season could really have ripple effects for him going forward in terms of his career.
Absolutely, I think he needs to use this season as a massive learning curve, and then going into the summer in terms of what he wants his Dundee side to be and how he wants to build it. But from a fan's point of view, I think he's lost a lot of credit in the bank because of the red flags of giving up cheap goals, losing from winning positions, and then stuff like Saturday where he's just making it just like inexperienced, just like naive decisions with the squad and the changes he was making. So yeah, it was positive under Tony Docherty, and this is definitely a season where there's certainly question marks, because you just, as a Dundee fan, just give us one season of normality and then build from there. Before we move on, just very quickly, Kevin, how are you feeling about Wimmer as Motherwell manager?
I mean, as I said, he called it well there with the Mashinishi sub. That's a deliberate thing that he's done. And the fact that the team played with such freedom when they go down to 10, to look at his point of view, managing that comes from a manager who allows you to feel freedom and not to bask into fear. I can't decide about his vibe. The clothes is a manager who's achieved a lot more who can dress like that, would be my sort of like coming from a football cliches point of view type of thing. If you're going to dress like when you just dress however you want, like you're going to the shops or whatever, I feel you have to have achieved a lot. You know, Guardiola does it quite a bit. Klopp does it quite a bit. You know, when they just sort of just dress in their jeans, trainers, and a hoodie. And I think you have to achieve stuff before you can start. You either have to be wearing club shit, or you have to be dressed with a jumper, shirt and tie, or a suit. And Wimmer's, but he's obviously maybe he comes across as quite a relaxed guy. So who knows how that's gonna blend in going into next season. But he's done all right. He has season. He's done the job that he was brought in to do.
Aye, the fact that Motherwell are comfortable at this point in the season is a positive. I think that's probably the biggest positive that you're probably going to get from them, other than maybe sneaking in the top six. But I was always going to be a big ask. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of puffy clothing, which his jacket
very
was.
Much with you.
His jacket was puffy. So I think back to the drawing board. And just a shout out to Motherwell fans for getting the bedsheets out to have a dig at Hamilton Accies and their misfortune as well. We will now go north to Dingwall. Ross County 1, Hearts 3. Ross County had me worried at one point because they took the lead through Ronan Hale. Lovely finish in the first half. Lauren Shankland equalised, then scored the second after the break before he teed up Alan Forrest to secure the victory for Hearts. And all but ensure the men from Gorgie are not going to be involved in a battle to avoid 11th spot in that dreaded relegation playoff. Now, Tony, you must have been rubbing your hands when the news filtered through that Hearts have been losing in Dingwall.
Yeah, I was excited because we just went ahead. We'd went ahead, obviously. Yep. So we were like in a good mood, and then someone's like, "Oh yeah, kind of Hearts are losing or not?" And they're like, "Oh, is it actually happening? Are they just in absolute calypso mode?" Because this Ross County team's been real bad in recent weeks, and I was like, if they're getting beat off them, they can genuinely get beat off anyone.
There was the big moment for me was not the concession of the goal, but not just the concession of the goal, but later on, Shankland played Alan Forrest through on goal, and he was 1-on-1. And as soon as he went through, I just had no confidence that I was going to end up in the back of the net. He got put under a little bit of pressure, but ballooned over the bar. Fans were going mental. That's
being kind. They put it at the stadium.
Yeah, yeah. And I just I said this to Rob when he messaged me asking how the game was. Like I felt like I sat in my seat in the press box very professionally with my head in my hat for what felt like 10 minutes. It's like this can't be happening, but it did. But thankfully, Shankland probably put in one of his best performances of the season and got us out of shit.
How did you feel about the lineup? And was there any shape change? Was there any big difference with having Fox in there?
I was a wee bit apprehensive when I seen the personnel in it. You changed to a 4-3-3, which was not surprising. I thought you'd go 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 because that's how he played during his first interim spell, and that's how he played with the B team, and it worked. It was just back to keeping things simple. Basically had two guys who, Forrest, like the vast majority of Hearts guys who can play wide, probably prefers playing on the left, and then Vargas on the right. And it opened up space for Shankland, who was back through the middle, number 9. And it meant, speaking to Shankland afterwards, he's like, he didn't have to drop deep. He wasn't at the halfway line. He wasn't spending loads of time out wide. He was just front and centre. And Fox the plan was to build a team where you've got a guy who can score goals as his number 9 and build a team where you are getting the ball into good areas for him.
I was going to ask, because I saw they were talking about that on the sports scene as well, and like having Shankland back up front, etc. And I just had a small thing. I was saying, like, it feels like you can get too quick to like start like exonerating Shankland of all blame for what's happened in his season and like in the last season under Hearts. It wasn't always that he was being paid at the tip of the diamond or anything like that. That was later. And I think there did need to be some sort of context put in that Shankland up front early in the season was poor. And even when the team, he was playing in his right place. And I'm not saying it's not right for him to do that. Hearts probably should have let him play himself back into form probably a bit more. But I did find it a bit like, now that the way that the context being given by media after that was like, oh, Critchley's away, now Shankland's back to being brilliant, and it was all his fault. And I feel that was like, I think that's rewriting history a little bit from the start of the season.
It was, I think, in the context of the last few weeks, and is definitely fits with that. And I mean, over the season as a whole, it's been poor on Shankland. Be the first one to admit he's been poor, but the blame that's been attached to him, I think, has been overstayed or too much, because there's such an expectation on him, and it's not his fault that he is the only one who can score regularly, and it's not his fault that early in the season when he was off form, that there was no one to step in and shoulder that responsibility.
Yeah, because I think that's a really fair point. Is that sometimes when you've got a player who's like that and he's been such a massive part, and he's got the only one who's got the skill set that's got him there, it means that they can never play themselves back into form. Because when they when they go off form, the team loses.
Yeah.
And then they're the one that carries the can for it, which shouldn't really be the case. It should always be, and this always goes back to something I'm going to talk about with Aberdeen. It's and something every Hearts fan I spoke to is the squad building and never being able to bring someone else in. And people always say, like, oh, and I get this, it's difficult to bring in a backup striker to someone like Shankland. Like the obvious one being like when you're at Spurs with Harry Kane, like bringing in it's always difficult to do that. But that doesn't mean that you can't bring in other players who can contribute to allow that player to have some sort of downturn in there. And this is when you come into like guys like Vargas, who I think deserve like quite a lot of criticism.
So that I think that's another part of it, is the fact that it's all well and good Shankland being out of form, and Hearts are going to, if that's the case, Hearts are going to struggle, because when you look back in hindsight, is that the team weren't robust enough to deal with him going out of form, because they were very much built around being successful, and he was very much a one man. There's like, he covered up a lot of cracks, like looking at it in hindsight. But it wasn't just the fact that he just fell out of form. All the fellow forwards or wide players didn't also fell out of form. So it was just like a whole combination.
Or I've never ever been in form.
Or never been in form.
Never performed.
And then
guys like George Grant and stuff who are meant to bring maybe a bit more goal scoring and guile from midfield. He's only ever done that in flashes. And then with Spittle as well, he went off form as well. He was another guy who maybe looked like he could be a goal threat, or at least bring like a creative spark to Hearts. It's like I said, just everyone is either never contributed or only contributed in flashes. And like, I never really thought about it until you said it in that way. That's meant that Shankland, when he goes, Hearts go, and then he has to carry the can, and he's the captain. It was just like Hearts put they put all their eggs in the Shankland basket.
Yeah.
They were so desperate to keep him. It felt like it's almost like they were scared to look at any other part of the team. And it was all like every eye's been on trying to keep and make Shankland better. And that's almost worked to Hearts' detriment. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think we have so obviously built him up a lot, but then there's an element of some fans will be looking to not tear him down, but looking for reasons to kind of move on from him, because it looks like he's going to move on. But it's like we've built him up, and then didn't have any safeguards in place when things didn't go well. But I still look at you analyse, and then bringing it back to more present day, you analyse where it went wrong with where it went with Critchley, and with Hearts right to get rid of him. But you go back to that Motherwell game and the Dundee United game, or the Motherwell game specifically, you have to win a game, and you've left Lauren Shankland on the bench, and you're playing Musa Drama up front, and you're just thinking, of course he deserves to be out in his arse. What a mental decision.
Yeah, because Drama's bad. He's bad. He's quite simply not very good. And something I noticed this game, and then I'll let you go off and explain everything, but there was 2 goals in this game that I feel like I should have saw so much more of in the season. Obviously, that Shankland one with Beningame driving and playing a nice pass, and him just taking a touch and fucking finishing it. Ruthless like that. I feel like I feel like I should see more of that for Beningame, because I think Beningame's brilliant, and he's Hearts' best player, and he's sort of rounded. He's really good at one of those guys who's got the sort of drop of the shoulder and the spaghetti legs a bit, where they can just drive past a couple of people with one little movement, and then they take 3 guys out and they drive. I always feel like Beningame could maybe bring more of that type of pass at the end of it, as a way of him sort of adding more to his game. I'd be like, and when you've got a striker like Shankland, you just feel like that goal, it's not great defending, but you should get 6 of them a season. Really, he just drive, playing at guys' feet, he buys a yard and he pings it in the bottom corner. Like just a bang average normal goal.
That's what I think. If you went back and watched Shankland the previous 2 seasons, he scored that goal quite a bit, where he just touched it and finished. And then this season, going back to his form, it's felt like he has touched it, not had a good touch, and then he's taken a second touch, and then the opportunity disappears.
Yeah,
so I think
especially with Shankland, because he's quite slow. And again, this has nothing to do with his weight or anything like that. He's just not a quick player. Like, so those players, it is good first touch and then ruthless finish because they know that they're never going to run away from it. And then the other goal is Hale's goal, and it just because God, I can't believe just what's his name, the midfielder for County that's got injured.
Chilvers.
Yeah, Chilvers. I can't believe I forgot his name. I like Chilvers a lot, but again, this is the squad building. I know Chilvers wasn't perfect, but Hale, the stylish striker, when you've got a stylish striker like that, and it's all about he's finishing about not a million miles away for Shankland, by the way, in terms of his in terms of in around goal. It's not about speed, it's about a variety of finishes and early shooting and all that. It's just Chilvers is obviously the type of player that can play that type of pass. And that's the kind of pass you don't need a world beater to do it. I mean, Noah Carey, we saw, was the one who created that chance. And it just feels, again, why do you only have just Chilvers who can do that when you've got a striker who's going to feed off that style? You don't have to go and get an amazing player. They could have afforded to have another luxury player or just someone who can thread a pass or who can play a pass quickly, who could maybe have just been a squad player at Ross County and then would have been able to step in for when Chilvers is got himself injured. I just feel like when you've only got a couple of these players that can do anything, and then for Ross County it's Hale and White are where the goals. You have to make sure that there's no way Ross County carry a small squad or anything like that. They never have. Couldn't always have one of the biggest squads. It just feels like, why wouldn't you go and make sure you have another? And I'm going to come on to this with Aberdeen as well, because I feel similar with McGrath being out has been a problem. And again, it's not about Chilvers or McGrath being incredible players. It's just that they have a skill set that some of the team's going to rely on. And for Ross County especially, with Hale, they're really going to rely on someone being able to play a quick pass into the box for him, and when he finds a bit of space so he can do that type of goal. It's like a ruthless, lethal finish from Hale for that one. And it's just, again, when you're squad building, it's like, you know that's the type of striker you've got, and Hearts know the kind of striker they've got. You need to make sure you've got more than one player who can deliver the type of thing that they feed off. And that's what I feel with County. They had one, and that's it. And then when he's gone, then it's like they barely can win a game.
I thought Joshua Nisbet would be that, would have been another one for the Ross County to be that guy who plays those type of passes and gets into their feet. But Ross County, for like the makeup of their front three, because they played Jordan White to the right and Samuel to the left, and the Hearts defended quite well against. They just played Halkett and Kent, and like
Halkett was definitely the man for today with White playing. Definitely.
Yes. Oh, yeah, Halkett was brilliant. He won the vast majority of his aerial battles, and they largely dealt with like the physical threat and the threat from set pieces. And Ross County wasn't overly impressed with them in terms of the ball in play and their build up. And yeah, it probably goes back to the fact that they're missing Chilvers. I think they'll finish 11th, but still, they've been circling the drain. But I think what they have is enough to survive relegation via the playoff.
I don't know. I think Livy v Ross County is a flip of a coin. That would be mine. And I think that with the types of defenders Livingston have, I think they could live with the fact with what Ross County have got without Chilvers. It's not like Ross County had with Danda and players like that when they played Partick Thistle that time, once they were able to get their claws into them and pad this on the run, there was enough quality in there to do that. I'm not sure if they were to go behind, there is 3 goals in this Ross County team. And that's what would worry me, is that if there is a bad performance, I don't see them getting out of jail. So if they played well and they were structured and they managed to get a couple of chances for Hale and he took them, yes. But I do feel like if it goes against them at any point in that tie, I think if they were to go 2 goals down, like 1-0 at Almonvale, and then Livingston managed to get a goal before half time, I don't see how they would turn that round. And that's what would worry me, is that if circumstances go against them, I think they would go. Unless is Chilvers able to come back this season, or is that him done?
No, he's done. ACL, he's done.
Yeah, that would worry me. It would worry me, because I just don't see where if it goes against them, where they would be able to bring it back. So they'd have to win. They'd have to go ahead, would be what I'd say.
But anyway, thankfully, Heart of Midlothian are not going to be in that position, and now we can just enjoy the rest of the season and concentrate on whoever's going to be the next head coach.
Any news on that?
It seems like
Scottish. That's where it goes.
I think Hearts prefer a Scottish low-risk appointment, and it appears that the interest in John McGlynn is cooled, and which hopefully means Derek McInnes.
I think those types of, when you're in really bad shit, when you're Hibs, Hearts and Aberdeen, they're the appointments. Gray's been a lot better than I thought, but Gray I thought was the right. If you go back to when I spoke about it, I thought Gray was the right one at the time, because I thought it was more of him steadying the ship rather than him doing what he's managed to achieve. And I feel like the same for Hearts is that if you put Derek McInnes in, you'll be in the top 6 next season. You will challenge for third. It might not be as pretty as what Hearts fans want, but Hearts can buy. It's like you could get McInnes in for 2 years maybe, and he could get you solid in there, and then you could go and make a more sexy appointment. But I don't like sexy appointments when you're struggling.
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't like it.
That's been my point on it, and I just think that, and it kind of goes back to comparing it to what Liam Fox said. I think it's just, you just want a simple approach. And I think simple approach, especially in Scottish football, it works so well. And especially with Hearts, and I think, again, Shankland's goals has probably covered up a fair bit over the last couple of years, that it's probably squad isn't in a robust place, and this summer there needs to be an overhaul. And I don't think you overhaul with someone brand new coming in the league, and I think that's a bigger risk, whereas you get someone who's done it, and there's no one that delivers more of a sure or closer to a sure thing than Derek McInnes. You just stabilise for 2 years, get yourself back into the top 4, and you do that for 2-3 seasons, and then from a position of strength, that is when you maybe try and get a bit cute. But my view is that, like, a lot of people, I think, and I was probably guilty with this at the start, like, think that Jamestown's going to be this panacea for all else. It's not, because to begin with, it's Hearts that are using it, but you still need to pick the right people or make the right decisions. And also, I don't know if I give too much reverence to, or we give too much reverence to Scottish football, but it is unique, and you need to have someone who knows Scottish football to help, especially in the infant stages, to make sure that you are doing what it takes to be successful in Scottish football.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said, because I was I went on a rant about Jamestown on the podcast last week when I was on with Fowler. I think it's been crazy the way it's been, the pedestal it's been put on when it's come in, and I feel like I only see Hearts. Whenever I see Hearts, Jamestown Analytics is reference, and I find that insane. It's a data collection scouting service. I think they're still a football team. There's still more to Hearts than that, and it doesn't mean that it's not good. But it's just the idea that nobody else uses data. It's like Hearts have found this sort of like golden bullet, and from this, and I found that it's like. But I suppose this is a bit of that comes from, because it comes from Brighton, and because there's a huge investment that comes with it. That you're probably not allowed to say this, but I will. But maybe there's an element of the fact, well, there comes with an investment. A guy wants to push Jamestown Analytics to other places. That name's pushed to the top of the pile a lot when Hearts are spoke about. I don't know. That's my theory, because using it comes with an investment.
So I think they're linked but separate to an extent. But I just think it's good to. It broadens horizons. It's meant to be it's like the gold standard, but it still involves people making decisions and still getting the right people in. And I just think that Hearts need to walk before they run, and to do that, they get Derek McInnes in. And when Hibs were on this,
you could have McInnes building the land of giants like he likes to do and all that, and then Jamestown brings the 2 nuggets that you need to win the matches when you're battering everyone else around. That's how you picture it.
But there's a lot of Hearts fans have been kind of complaining. It's like need a leader, need a manager and a head coach, stuff like that, and need to be more have less of a soft centre. It's like, well, McInnes kind of ticks the boxes of all of those. And when Hibs were on the hunt for a new manager, my apprehension was, if they get McInnes, and he would sort it out, and it would be like derbies would be difficult to play. I mean, David Cray's come in and they've been very difficult for Hearts to play, it turns out. So, that's where I am, and we'll see how it develops in the next few days and weeks. We mentioned McInnes, his former club, Aberdeen, lost 1-0 to St Mirren in Paisley. Mikel Mandron with the only goal of the game. Tony, you have got a lot to say about Aberdeen. We'll talk about Aberdeen first, then we'll come on to St Mirren.
Yeah. I was going to give Aberdeen more of a kicking, and then I spoke to Tom because I wanted to check about a few things if they were fair. And what's annoyed me about Aberdeen this season is I think when I boiled it down, I feel like it was the signing of Oakles is the thing that's really riled me up from not an Aberdeen point of view, but an outsider's point of view. It's like they already had Keskinen, who looks good, but obviously still has a lot to learn. Decision making's still relatively poor, and I still think he wants to play in transitions rather than being like an excellent dribbler or anything like that. And they had Morris that can play in that role. And then you've got Papagay who can play, who's like quite a abstract player who plays off instinct and like it's hard to pin him, and he plays in moments a lot of the time with Papagay. And I think something that we've noticed that at the start of the season, that the chaos that Devlin brought with his ability when he was more willing to burst into the box, and the fact that they had McGrath, who plays the game a bit slower than all the other attacking players that they had, and obviously brings a bit of quality, and his crossing and passing is a lot more about accuracy, and there's a bit more of variety in his passing. And then once he got injured and Aberdeen kind of got a bit not worked out, what's annoyed me is that when it's hit January, they went out and signed a whole new defence in January. They spent about £3 million over summer in January. But then that Ockles one, when the obvious thing that they needed to do, and that anyone else could see, was that they needed guile, and they needed a playmaker, they needed a 10, they needed to replace basically what they lost with McGrath. And this isn't a discussion about whether I think Hibs have stolen Aberdeen's best player. That's really not what I'm trying to get to here. Just that they lost a player with a specific set of attributes, and then decided, and then over the time never bothered replacing them, but then brought in Ockles, who's essentially just a carbon copy of all the players that they already had, but worse. And then they had with Nisbet, and they brought Daba in, who I looked at, he's quite a hard runner, and he looks like a penalty box striker, Daba, but not a lot else. So again, it's like Nisbet, who already has his consistency issues, and I never like to go into this about some players, but obviously it feels like mood's a big part of Nisbet. He's a player that possibly needs to be managed. You need to create the right environment for him. And when he's got the bit between his teeth, like the best example of that is when he came back for that injury with Hibs, and he'd clearly been working really hard, and he went on and had like an incredible second half of the season under Johnstone, where he really looked like he'd really put it together. But I just feel like there's nothing. Nisbet is relatively good with his back to goal, and I feel like we're not seeing that at all because there's nobody for him to link with. And I feel like he gets played the ball into him quite a lot. And again, and this comes into something to me, again, when I'm making a judgment about Nisbet's mood, I can see him getting frustrated. And then sometimes in this game, it's breaking down constantly when it's around him, and I can see the arms going up, and we all know that style of Nisbet. So one, I was going to give a kicking about Aberdeen. Then I remembered that as a guy trying to build from scratch in one season.
Yeah.
But he has been given quite a lot of money to do that. But yeah, just watching them, it's very frustrating watching how much everyone knows how to play them, everyone worked them out, and we still see it all the time. But there was a transfer window where that could have been solved, and it wasn't. And it could have been a loan deal that could have done it, and it probably could have, because of the lead they had, possibly could have just gave them third, regardless.
From the bits I've seen of the Aberdeen game, Nisbet reminded me of Shankland at times this season, where he's playing too deep to link it, and he was too far away from the goal to link play. And then when he is there, that you look at look at the three players who are playing up front with him. Ockles, Keskinen and Shayden Morris want to run in behind. I don't think they want the ball to. They don't want to play 1-2s with Nisbet, or they don't want to involve themselves in that side of in that side of the game. And it leaves them. It just looked. They were, other than his goal against Hibs, Aberdeen seemed quite toothless against Hibs, and they seemed very toothless against St Mirren. And just with that,
and against Hearts, even though they got the 2 goals, the same thing happened.
Exactly. And Talene, he's obviously trying to, especially his 11 against St Mirren, he's trying to mix things up, but they look disjointed as an attacking force. And again, it goes back to what you said about, I suppose a big reason for that, you go back to what you said about McGrath.
And like Morris was probably the best of this. He was the one who probably gave the best dribbling technique, and the one who actually got them into positions where, because this is another problem. Clarkson and Palaversa are nice players, but they're not huge ball carriers either. No. So there's nobody ever committing people to buy the space, to create the space that they need to have for basically having 3 just whippets everywhere who just want to run and run and run. And Morris was the furthest forward. I think the idea might have been to try and drop Nisbet in, and then he would try and find Morris with reverse balls, because Nisbet does have that in. That's all I can see. And that, I thought Keskinen had quite a poor game. And Keskinen's been quite inconsistent. Keskinen's a player, though, that I just think there's enough I can see where it is going to come together. And when they get the rest of the team right, he will be good. That would be my gut instinct.
And even now you leave him on the pitch, because even if he is having an off day, he's still capable of winning a match. He's still capable of doing something that sparks Aberdeen at life for even just one moment.
Yeah. And it was quite early in this game that they ended up taking. It was 55 minutes they took Ockles and Clarkson off, and they brought Polvara and McGrath on, which I thought they probably should have just done that half time. And if you watched the first half, Aberdeen were infuriating. We all know that, Joe, you're an easy guy to talk to me this, because we support the clubs that this happens to, because of the ones, and this isn't saying you're bigger, it's just that teams are smart enough to know that there's just pressure on you to have the ball. You're bigger. You're a bigger club, so there's pressure on you to try and break them down. So other clubs are able to use that against you. And obviously this is happening to Aberdeen constantly. And this is the thing, they've been getting good results recently, but it's more because of moments and having a bit more quality, rather than what I felt that they cracked it or anything like that. I was pretty sure that they were going to lose this game or drop points going into St Mirren. When I was talking to my mates before the game, I was like, I think this is a honking game for Aberdeen. And that's not even just talking about the fact that St Mirren clearly have their number this season. I think this is the 3rd time they beat them. But just the style of St Mirren, the fact that St Mirren are so aggressive, they'll be more than happy to sit in about them with a machine back 3 with Taylor and Gogic, who are really aggressive. I was like, they're just not going to fancy it. And they never got anywhere near it. And the only time, it's like they get to the crossing positions, but the players that they've got aren't all really good at crossing. So they've got all these whippets, and when they do get there, it doesn't work. Shinnie, I thought, had, in an attacking sense, he had a really poor game, and he got forward 3 times where he just smashed the ball at the park, or he passed it at the park, coming for that left back bit, which you'd expect more because he has got a bit of quality about him. He's a midfield player, really playing out there. But you see the main bit of quality that comes from the wide area is when they managed to get Clarkson out of the central area and get him into the wide area to create the goal. I thought they were really unlucky not to get that goal. It does hit his hand. I think he gets a bit of a nudge. Is why his arms are out there a bit. So it's like the St Mirren player's almost pushing this bit into that, and that's why it hits his hand, rather than it being something that this bit's trying to change the ball. That would be my instinct as a defence of Aberdeen. And then Ockles, it is a pretty decent finish when he goes into the back stick, but it doesn't go for them. And for them to go, they've just beat Hibs, 90 minutes, and they're back in that run for 3rd, and 90 minutes where they don't even get a shot on target. And it doesn't work. And all the same things, like I said, we know the game plays out exactly how you think it's going to play out. And this is what's frustrated me about Aberdeen, is that, well, it's great because it's allowed us to peel back about 25 points. But overall, and it's normally the people that can carry the ball at the park are like Shinnie and Jensen are the ones who can get the ball up there. It's just, as you said, it's just disjointed. Why don't we move on to St Mirren for a minute, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things I want to touch on with St Mirren. Firstly is where would you rank this in terms of the last 3 seasons under Robinson? Robinson's done a tremendous job with St Mirren. He's got a core, and he's been able to kind of adapt and tweak it each season, where there's losing key players, but he's still managing to eke out results and eke out really good seasons. So you look back at 2 seasons ago, they finished top half for the first time since the mid-80s. Last season, 5th, they got into Europe. Now, to finish top 6 for the 3rd season in a row, potentially still get a European spot. They're not out of it just yet with their results.
That's put them into a position where they've got a chance, because they played Dundee United next.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And you wouldn't just you talked about Dundee United. They just seem to be running out of power, whereas St Mirren seem to just been powering up. They've had a great run of results recently, and would this? Yeah, the answer is yes if they finish 5th, but even if they finish 6th, would this be Robinson's best season considering what he's had to put up with this campaign?
That was exactly what I was going to say. Like he done an interview talking about the things he's had to deal with are not he put it as not the things you learn at Largs. You know, like when you're learning to be a coach, and it wasn't just once. We're talking about 3 criminal proceedings that have left, meant he's had to move on. And I assume with that, it's difficult in a dressing room. You know, people are going to have opinions on the things that the players are doing. Just like, look, we all, if you as an analogy, I mean, we all share a WhatsApp group, and we all do this podcast, for example, and there's a group of us. But if you're hearing about things about people beating their wives allegedly or whatever, I have a problem with that. You know, that would have a problem in the people would say that they don't want to work with that guy or whatever. So these things are really difficult, and they're a lot more than just someone playing badly or whatever. You've got different personalities and people's opinions on what's acceptable and all these different things, and about players being out drinking or speeding or whatever. You know, people have opinions on these things in a workplace. Of course they do. Especially one that's all about unifying, and you all have to work together, not just in a call centre, but you know, like you're digging each other out in competitive sports and stuff. So that is really difficult to deal with as a manager. And what I've loved about it is that, like you said, he's managed to get them reset and go again, sort of midway through the season after that. It felt almost like he had to build like the cuteness to the signing of John, for example. That's worked out really, really well. And like a lot of teams this season, he's had plenty of injuries. Yeah. And he just got his star striker sold from under him. I know it's the right thing to do, and you get 6 figures, and the guy's contracted for 4 weeks, and I mean, you'd be mad not to. So of course it was the right thing to do, but he's still having to deal with more and more and more and more at every single turn.
And he's also, I think it's probably gone under the radar, but also important to note, he lost his assistant during the season as well. Dermot O'Carroll? Sure, he went and got a management job himself. So he's then having to. I think it was Brian Kerr that came into his assistant. I'm sure that happened this season.
Yeah,
came in this season. So there's that period. There's that dysfunction as well, that to continue to be able to.
Playing European games at the start?
Yeah, but I think it probably goes back to the credit that Robinson deserves for the. Maybe culture's not the right word because you sign in certain players, but the foundations that he's put in place at St Mirren, where you know what you coming into that club. If I was a player and I knew about Scottish football, signing for St Mirren, I was like, right, I know what St Mirren are. They're 3-5-2, and they're going to be against certain teams. They're going to be sitting off, and they're going to be hard to beat. So the fact that they have that identity, on-field identity, is. The fact that he's built that has obviously helped massively when things are going tough off the field, that they've got that to fall back on.
Yeah. And then we go into, like I said, he makes quite brave decisions sometimes. Like again, Boyd Muntz, I'm a big fan of the midfield that he's had recently O'Hara, Phillips, and Boyd Muntz. I've said
I
this
love
on
Phillips.
numerous. I like the makeup of that, but Boyd Muntz wasn't really good last week. So he brings Smith in. So he's willing to make sort of like tough decisions. People do get taken out of the team, even if they're quote unquote, you would think like favourites of the manager. And then if we go into the improvement in Phillips between his spell at Aberdeen and his spell at St Mirren is stark.
He was born to play for St Mirren under Stephen Robinson.
Yeah,
that was his calling.
Yeah. So like he's done that, and then obviously all the Sanya, the improvement is well documented on what sort of like the rise of all the Sanya didn't really make much sense. I mean, people thought he was just a running machine who would just run, one of those guys who just runs at the park with the ball, just there's nothing to be had there. And then, which brings us on to the goal, Mandron's come on loads in terms of what he's capable of. Like the save that Mitov makes when Mandron tries to find the bottom corner. So he does really well there to take it down. Then it's like an instep. He tries to curl it into the bottom corner. Much more quality in Mandron's game, I've thought, when I've seen him this game. And then obviously the goals, really great. I mean, from an Aberdeen point of view, it's someone chesting the ball from a deep free kick and then scoring a volley. Not great, of course, but like the quality of that to get the swivel and get the finish. Because Mandron was another one that I think we were all on the idea that he was a hoodie that you knobbed the ball up to, and that was the long and short of Mandron. He was a stopgap player, squad striker for a guy like Stephen Robinson to make sure that when certain guys aren't available, I can still play a certain way. And there's like Ayunga's managed to go fall off a cliff and came back, and I thought Ayunga was really, really good for the period he was on the pitch in this game. He had to come off at half-time, I presume because of an injury, but I thought Ayunga was really good in that first half. So there's so much like about Stephen Robinson. And if you want my hot take, I think he'd be a disgusting Hearts manager. I would hate it. I think he would. He has everything that would be right for Hearts. And Hearts fans, some Hearts fans wouldn't want to admit that Stephen Robinson is and the style that he would bring, but it is the way Hearts should be, and it was the way that Hearts would be good under Robinson.
I think McInnes is probably more stylistically just in terms of almost 4-4-2.
Yeah,
and like a big striker. But I totally get it. My only thing was with Robinson, when you compare Robinson and McInnes, is McInnes has had that experience of managing a bigger club and the expectation there, and he's been a manager of a team where he has to be protagonist. And I just wonder, I think Robinson deserves a move, and I just don't know if Hearts are the right one just yet. I could be wrong, but I look at it and think if Goodwin was to leave, like Dundee United, I think it's a natural progression.
Yeah, that's maybe a good point.
He's definitely done enough to earn a bigger job. Before we move on, Mikel Mandron for Scotland.
Is this a real thing? Is that
yes? He qualifies apparently.
Well, if Simon Murray can't get in, I think we'd be stretching it to get Mikel
Imagine
Mandron.
starting a World Cup qualifier, Mikel Mandron and Simon Murray, supported by Scott McTominay.
People losing their fucking marbles at that. But I will say that, in my opinion, overall, obviously because of the things we mentioned earlier that Robinson's had to put up with, St Mirren are the fourth best team in the league this season. That's my opinion. I think if you take a lot of the issues they've had to deal with, the injuries and the off-field stuff, if they hadn't been there, I think they could easily have finished fourth this season.
My biggest what's the opposite of criticism? The biggest bit of praise I can give them is that for all of that is they look like they've had the most normal season of a Scottish Premiership team. Whereas like Hibs have gone from there to there. Whereas I know it's not been normal off the field, but on the field, they've maybe started a bit slow, but they've been exactly what you expect from St Mirren. And I wouldn't put it past them. I think Dundee United will be very, very nervous this Saturday, whereas St Mirren will be well up for it, and that's where it gets really difficult.
The only thing is that Dundee United have basically been what St Mirren are to Aberdeen to St Mirren this season.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, like I'll be honest, I don't know what I want. I'd quite like to see St Mirren do it, But my worry is that would probably involve us going to St Mirren Park when it'd be a huge game on that Wednesday night, and part of me wouldn't mind just seeing St Mirren not having anything to play for. If they go 2 points behind, then I'm anxious about that that game, because St Mirren beat Hibs a lot over the last few years, and some of our weakest moments have come against St Mirren this season as well. I mean, we've had players fighting with fans during St Mirren games, and obviously we got humped 3-0 on the opening day of the season by them. So, as much as if it didn't involve Hibs, I'd be gunning for Aberdeen. But if they beat Dundee United, then suddenly my biggest worry is the team that we are fucking shit against, and the team that are the most Scottish Premiership team that you can play at their ground midweek when they can get in Europe. That stinks.
Hey, let's go. And also, let's go to McDiarmid Park. St Johnstone 0, Kilmarnock 2. David Watson opened the scoring for Kelly after a common theme this weekend, some rubbish defending, and then Danny Armstrong sealed the 3 points with a penalty after Rory McKenzie was upended in the box in the second half. Where will we go first? What did I have in my notes? We'll come to Kelly at the end. St Johnstone, how are you feeling about Simo Valakari, Tony? Because I think you mentioned it yesterday. I think you were feeling a wee bit conflicted.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up. It's like I don't know if I'm being had by Valakari or like my pants being pulled down. I've found him impossible to pinpoint in his time at St Johnstone, because it's like you can't say they were 10th when he came in, so they weren't rock bottom when they came in. But I feel like that's my defence of that is I feel that's where they were going regardless. And the squad that Levine had built was stinking. And I feel like the ones that he brought in, obviously him losing, God, I'm bad with names today, man. Who's the defender that really good that's got injured?
This is
why we're on the telly, Joe.
Bozo,
yeah. So Mikulic, that was a huge loss, but he was brought in by Simo Valakari. I think Belidis was as well, and they've all had they were so bad defensively, and then they have loads of attacking players. And I quite like the fact that it's like I thought he was maybe an idealistic manager, and he put all his eggs in the attacking basket because he was playing some fucking mental teams when he first came in, where every striker they owned was on the park. But then I was maybe thinking that he didn't have faith in his defence till he was able to sign players in January. So he was like basically going, well, the best way for me to maybe win games is to go attack him. He's some of the performances he's managed to eke out of that team under like the performance against Celtic, I honestly would say pound for pound is one of the best performances of the season by anyone, because of the circumstances that were attached to that game. They'd just been absolutely humped by Hibs. Dundee had won the day before. They were 8 points behind. It was over, and you're playing the best team in the country. And for them to pull out that performance at that time was really, really impressive. But like I said, I'd watched them Easter Road. They were fucking abysmal in that game. Like, they were an embarrassment to watch. And then in this game, again, he makes a lot of changes to his team all the time. He brings in, like, as I said, if there's an argument, should you not be playing Nicky Clark in this game? Holt wasn't in. Duke McKenna lost his place. I know he wasn't great last week, but I feel like Duke McKenna's a really handy player. So he's got, and McPake's been a weird one, because sometimes I watch him and like this, he looks really big guy, but is he good enough? But then he's shows some nice skills. He created a couple of goals last week. I get confused with St Johnstone a lot. And Valakari as well. I see something I think he's too idealistic. Then I see him pull out what seems like a Valakari masterclass. Another time, I think he's signed some decent players at tough times. And then other times he looks really naive when he insists on playing out for the back and he just gets humped by teams. I just do not know, like, if he's good or not, simply.
My feeling is watching them and looking at them, it's like, this is quite damning. I don't know if they're any better than what they were under Craig Levine, and they've obviously dropped. I think he took over them when they were 10th, and now they're 12th and heading for the the Scottish Championship as they have been for the last couple of seasons. Just the way that they've been operating is. I obviously have sympathy for him because he came in and it was obviously taking over a difficult situation with them struggling, and the squad was lopsided and balanced. You didn't know it was lacking in key areas. They've obviously strengthened goalkeeper. Goalkeeper wise, they couldn't not strengthen. But the fact is, he had a window. It's not as if he came in literally right before the window. He came after the window, so he still had time to put his stamp on the team. He signed players, and then you look at the team that played against Killie. We bit of a mess. I know he can't help with the fact that you got Barry Douglas playing as centre back, Sven Sprangler playing at centre back, Graham Carey playing at right wing back. It's like, come on. Why?
That is mad.
Why is it? He can't run. He can't run.
And he's all left feet.
Yeah, I love watching Graham Carey, but I would not love watching him play right wing back.
Sprangler's one of your weakest, your weak links, and you're going to defend him. His like player that's going to be protecting him is a guy who just wants to hit shots from the centre of the park. So again, it's sometimes it looks like, as I said, masterclasses, and other times it's like you've lost it. So he feels like maybe he's a manager who wants to impact, maybe a bit like Don Cowie, and that sometimes that means it gets you something that you wouldn't have thought. Then other times it makes you look like a fucking idiot because you've overthought it, or you're trying to almost. He's a guy who wears 2 earrings, man. He probably likes the spotlight, would be my guess with Simo Valakari. And I think sometimes, like you're saying, that decision making maybe says that. It's a pop star making the decisions.
And I mean, the goals he gave up were really cheap. Balodis not clearing the ball like soft. Just what are you doing in the build up to Watson's goal, and then such a soft penalty to give away to make it 2-0 to Killie. So I think St Johnstone are deservedly heading to the Championship, where they currently belong.
How would you agree with this, Joe? I still think that if they go down, I would definitely stick with Valakari because they're going to be one of the better teams in that league. He showed that some of his signings, he's got an eye for a player because obviously St Johnstone don't really have any scouting. So I imagine it is a bit through his contact because these players were coming from absolute randoms. You've no idea who they are. And then obviously he quite like attacking football. He quite like possession football. They will get a fair bit of that in the Championship. So maybe Valakari would be quite suited to managing one of the better teams in a league.
I would be moving on if there was a chance to, and starting fresh. Valakari has to. I think it's one of those where he could go down and St Johnstone could scoosh the Championship under him playing great football. But I would say out of that and the other option, that is getting relegated to League One, I would say there's more chance of him taking them down back-to-back relegations than he is bouncing back. So yeah, I would say that it would be. I would be more comfortable if I was a St Johnstone fan. Maybe starting fresh. They just need a massive clear out.
Kilmarnock, Finlay back has sorted everything, really, hasn't it? I mean, if he'd been there the whole season, everything would have been fine. It feels like.
Yeah, they've just. That's what I was going to ask you, was just about. How do you view Kilmarnock's season? Because I mean that win all but I think, am I right in saying that all but secures their so they've got they're 6 points ahead with 9 to play for, so they've taken a massive step towards getting away from the 11th spot. How would you view their season? You look at it, it's been a pretty frustrating one.
Mm-hmm. And they've got 41 points, so that it was quite a unique season that teams of that points level were still in bother in terms of like going down or the playoffs, because there hasn't been a joke team this season. So I mean, he's only 4 points. I know we've had the top 6 a couple of games, blah blah blah, but he's still kicking around mid-table. And when and this is the thing about McInnes, is that this is only his second bad season as a manager. So his last season at Aberdeen, and then obviously because he got Kilmarnock promoted. What was that, sorry?
Bad season, second bad season in Scottish football.
In Scottish football, yeah. Sorry, when he went down south, that went terrible. But and then when he was at the Aberdeen one, when that went terrible, I mean, they couldn't score in 8 games or something. I mean, that just simply ran its course.
Yeah.
But with Kilmarnock, like obviously they got them promoted, and then he bought them a season where they were able to run down all those contracts without spending loads of money and kept them in the league. You know, I thought that was still good. It was a shit team.
Agreed.
And he dealt with it. He was a manager who was confident enough that he could get enough out of that. And then they were able to grow, and then he was able to take them nearly into the European groups. They were relatively unfortunate to not make that. So it was a good punt, and they obviously wrote off the start of the season to try and do that. And he spoke quite a lot about how the fact that he thought they were going to, that he had confidence they'd be able to make it and get into the top 6, but it just never happened for them. The loads of the injuries, I think we found that there's elements of that Kilmarnock back team was being held together by members that made other players look great. Because obviously I always thought that Kilmarnock defence, all 4 of them, I was like, God, I feel like they would play first team for nearly everyone else. But that's maybe been found out a little bit. And then he never replaced. He's had to try and make stylistic changes, I think, with Vassell being injured and Marley Watkins kind of looking like he's on the way of being finished.
Armstrong kind of dropping form. Mike Kennedy, bit of that and a bit of injury as well. So it's having Fraser Murray stepping up to be to give him credit.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a poor season for McInnes, especially off the back of what they had there. But I still think, and again, it's what you spoke about previously, there's still an element of calmness. I never really felt they were ever going to go down, even when they got them into 11th. I just never felt it was going to happen. I always felt they were good enough. I always felt they were going to put together a run. And they have. And despite the fact he was trying to balance it. So I just feel like McInnes is still, by the end of the season, they're going to have finished mid-table, despite all the problems. So as you said, he's just the closest thing you're going to get to this year thing. And I always said that even if I was Kilmarnock, even when it got really bad, and it did for a period, it got really bad, people were starting to worry that once you got through it, I said this on a podcast, I'd still be keeping them. There is no way Kilmarnock will get a better manager than McInnes. Yeah. There's no way the follow-up will be. So if I'm them, I'd still be trying to tie him down. And I'd still be letting him try to rebuild again this season, as you saw, because even when it did get bad, he's managed to turn it around and he's managed to get them safe. And it's just a shame to move on to them. And I think Bobby Wills is making a big mistake, and I'm really sad that he's doing it. I really wish he'd went to another Scottish team or signed another contract to Kilmarnock for another year or 2 to play, because I feel we're going to lose him. And I get really sad because it looks like a unique player that's been produced in Scottish terms.
Yeah. I was, when I seen the link and it was Swansea, it was kind of just like, really? See you in a couple of years.
Yeah, I'll see you in a few years, mate. But you'll be much more jaded by that time. And it's not like he's going to a big enough club where you feel like he's going to get amazing coaching or anything like that that's going to make that it's worth it to play in the under 23s or whatever. It's just like, she's not going to play, man. And as I said, I was excited about having like a Bergkampy style player. Just didn't feel Scottish at all with the little touches and the technique and the way that he played. So I was really excited about seeing maybe another year, maybe even going to seeing if he took what he'd done, if he took a step up to an Aberdeen or a Hearts or a Hibs even, is that sort of like bridging move before the big move to whoever it is. But obviously it's a short career, blah, 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 agents getting your ear, all the rest of it.
You mentioned on the podcast you did with Telfer on Saturday morning, the Championship pod, where you're talking about Keelan Adams, and he's another guy that, like Bobby Wills, you're thinking Celtic are like they're the type of signings that Hearts, Hibs, and Aberdeen should be trying to get when he's in that part of his contract, or Celtic and Rangers taking an inexpensive risk to take in someone who's a very highly rated striker in Scottish football, young guy. We will finish finally after over an hour and a half looking at the Old Firm. Rangers won, Celtic won at Ibrox. Celtic fans in attendance for the first time in a fair while. Rangers took lead through a nice Cyril Dessers finish, but Celtic's £9.5 million signing Adam Idah equalised for a share of the spoils. we're not going to talk about this game much. Tony, Dessers or Idah, who would you rather have?
Dessers every day.
Finish pod.
Yeah, I like fun sometimes as well.
Yeah.
And Adam Idah is frustrated because
Minging.
his physique and all that. Like, you can see why people think you can see why people think that they can have, like, you know, that he's going to be a big player. And why maybe he came from Norwich, why he's playing in Ireland. I can see it all, and there's occasions where I hark back to this every time I talk about Idah, but that performance at Rugby Park last season was when I thought, right, I understand you. He just never does it again. Never does it. He should be occupying, he's quite quick as well. He should be occupying defenders and throwing them around like empty shirts, is what Adam Idah should be doing. He's soft. He's a soft player. And he does no killer instinct either. And it's like, I can't think of any other player who's less suited to playing for one of the old firm as a centre forward. It's all he can do is put the icing on the cake. And with his physique and his attributes, he should be absolutely battering people in Scotland.
His attempted finish in the first half was absolutely disgusting. Just minging.
Aye, minging. Is he trying to lift it?
I think he's trying to lift it, yeah.
There's no technique to it at all. And I know he gets the goal, and I know he got the winner last year against that, but that's a fucking dead rubber. So I'm not. Again, it's exactly where I see what he does, and it tells you everything you need to know about Adam Idah. Is that they sold his only competitor for the jersey, and they still didn't play him. So I think that tells you, and they're only playing him now because they're desperately trying to make him something, you know, going into next season. Because it's either that or taking a huge loss on him in the summer.
I think, I don't know if it was us on a podcast early in the season, but I was certainly on a podcast early in the season. And the thing about Celtic is that they're in a position now where they can take risk with their signings, and they've got so much money that they can get away with one or two duds. But you're looking at the best part of 20 million for him and Engels, and neither have really stood out in the Scottish Premiership the way they should as a Celtic player that's cost all that money and a dominant team. You're just thinking, if I was a Celtic fans, I would want a hell of a lot more than what yous are producing.
And it's like the Engels, I felt like it was the most patronising thing, him getting nominated for Young Player of the Year for the PFA. I was like, that is everything against the spirit of that award, especially in a country like Scotland, that £11 million signing for the Bundesliga is getting a nomination for that. So I was like, I wasn't a fan. Engels, I can see it. I can see the talent. I get it. But yeah, again, it's the minerals. It's and it's not about playing in the. But don't get me wrong, Engels, I think, is going to be like everyone else that's shite for the first season. Next season, he'll figure it out and go, everyone else here's pish. Right, I'm just going to start doing everything normally, like I normally do, and stop worrying about everyone else around me. That's my instinct with Engels that'll come out, but I don't have that instinct with Idah at all. But this game is so forgettable. Like, I saw a tweet, someone said in 5 years, you'll see a clip of this, and you'll not be able to put it anywhere. They'll never be able to work out exactly what happened. Jeffy had a wild football match, I suppose. Barron was pish. Scales, Idah was rubbish. And then Maida missed that chance at the end where it looked like, maybe that's the old Maida, but he just doesn't have a clue what to do when he's running a goal, and he tries to do about 12 different things.
He's a cool-looking guy, a really cool-looking guy.
With the specs, works very well.
Yeah. He's how he was looking at the PFA awards. He looked like a real sharp dog. He's really cool.
He looked like a bassist and Fall Out Boy, and I mean that in a good way. And anything else? Cherny going Raj when he got put off. I don't know. It's one of those. At least he cares, possibly, because he did lose it. And it was a weird sub to make.
It's I was like, it's not because we've been talking for so long. It's like literally couldn't care less about this game.
Oh, the best player in the park was Raskin. How about that? There you go. There's something. And again, like Rangers, if they get taken over by the 49ers, get him on a new contract. If they don't, sell him so you can bet the rest of this team, because that's the only person anyone's going to be up for buying. And don't sell Dessers. It's too much fun.
Yes, I really like Diamondi. I think there's something there.
Yeah, Diamante's a good player.
And Dessers is brilliant fun to watch. He's not quite Morelos fun, but I remember tweeting this early in the early season. I would love to watch a strike partnership of Morelos and Dessers. That would be so much fun.
If that happens, if Dessers in Colombia or Argentina or wherever Morelos is playing, they sign them, I'm glued to them. I'm paying for subscription channels so I can staying up, losing my job because I'm late every day because I'm staying up to watch fucking Colombian football.
Being fed by Andrea Salazar, Hearts legend. We will leave it there, Tony. Thank you very much. That was a pleasure. It's gone on a while, but there was plenty to talk about, and it's always fun talking Scottish Football Premiership with yourself. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much to everyone who listened and continues to listen. I would like to point you in the direction of patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. There is loads of content that goes up there. I think it's £2 rather than $2 a month. That is their cheapest tier to get on and get some content. Obviously £5 and £7, and you've got stuff like the best 12 Scottish Premiership wide men / attacking midfielders / Luke McCowan. A season of apathy for Stirling Albion fans. Sean and Telfer talking about the lower league edition of the PFA Scotland Player of the Year, and Inverness, Motherwell. Loads of things covered on there, so be sure to check that out. Don't think there's any other housekeeping, so
we've got a huge announcement coming. It might have already even been made by the time you listen to this, but keep an eye on our socials in the next 24 hours, I would say.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Looking forward to that. That's all I will say on the matter. And before I spoil it, say goodbye, Tony.
Cheers, bye everyone.
And goodbye. Have a nice week.